Welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story on Tour. I'm your host, Bruce McFarlane, CEO of BDC Partners, and I'm here at the IFA conference in Phoenix. I'm without my co-host today. I left him back in Australia. But what we do in these podcasts is go behind the scenes of some of the biggest names in the franchising community, both here and in the US, where I am today. So today we've been talking about franchising with a couple of my guests today, but it's about what's wrong with franchising. Is it broken? And looking at responsible franchising and how that's been playing out in the US. This time last year, I was at IFA and I was fortunate to meet, Michelle Rowan, who's the president and COO of Franchise Business Review. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with Michelle over the last 12 months and understand her passion and knowledge of the franchise sector. So I thought, what better to bring someone like that to talk about what's wrong with franchising and how responsible franchising can be done better. Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before we talk about responsible franchising and some of the things, we'll go back a bit. So, you grew up, went to university in New Hampshire.
Sure did.
So learned a bit about communications.
Yes.
So what attracted you to the communications, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say I was one of those people that hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to go into teaching, and the university I chose, I had to pick a different major. So I chose communication because I knew it went well with business and it would be great in the classroom, and wanted a general degree. So it was very intentional that I did that. But then I got into hospitality. I got into a sales office of a hotel right out of school, and decided I would not make enough money teaching, unfortunately. It's a very important role, but I didn't want to go back for my fifth year. I didn't like being in a classroom. I really enjoyed learning what I chose to learn about on my own kind of journey. So I didn't want to go back in a classroom, and I decided I loved being in the hotel. I loved being in business. My father was always in business. He was an engineer by trade, but had bought a business when I was in high school, and just was really passionate about business. So kind of got stuck in the hotels, and then went to a small business in my local town.
And so communications and in business, so you're passionate.
Yes.
It's great. It's really interesting. The senator spoke at the conference yesterday about being involved in business from an early age and what you learn from that. So what did you learn about business from the family business, being involved?
So I wasn't involved in the family business. My dad owned a tool and die company, so it was all very engineer based. But what I would say is what I learned was all in hospitality. And so waiting tables all through, really in college, it's how I supported going to school. And then being in the hotels, hospitality is where I learned so much about business. And then going to a small business and having that opportunity to be the jack of all trades. So I came in young. I would think I was 21, and I was a support person. And the brand, it was a competitor of our large phone carrier here. So these little businesses popped up. And I got into a small business that was local that kept getting acquired. And I just kept raising my hand and saying, yes, I want to take that on. I want to learn that. And so was able to manage an inside sales team for them, and started traveling. But I think what I love is doing all the things, not kind of working for a large corporation and doing the one thing. I like kind of thinking about all sides of the business. And that's what hospitality is. Like, you're doing whatever it is to serve the customer. And so that is, I think, where my mindset comes from in business. And
we'll talk about FBR in a minute, but the entrepreneurial side of you as well. So you had a couple of your own businesses on the side. So tell us about, I'll get to the brewery next and the hospitality, but you had another business earlier.
I did. You found an oldie, but a goodie. I made handmade cards and invitations. My partner and I did it on the side, and we were, before you could very easily create creative invitations, that was really our focus for someone that didn't want the traditional white stale invitation. So that's so funny that you found that. But yes, I loved doing that. But then when I had my daughter and was at FBR, I just did not have the hours. So I gave that up. And
so, but I think starting a business from scratch, I was just talking to Aaron Harper about, his journey into, and starting a business from scratch is very difficult. And so I think why the franchising model is great for entrepreneurs, that have the support around them, but you've done it from scratch, and then
Yes. So I've done it from scratch now twice.
With the brewery?
So I will say the brewery is really my husband's passion.
Okay.
So I came around to just support him in that journey. it's very hard to start a business. And I think doing that gives you empathy for all the franchisees that are out there doing this, because they are entrepreneurs in a different way. They are being given a playbook. But my father also left his kind of engineer career and started his own business and then became a franchisee.
Oh, okay.
So that was really getting to see that. And I will say, not a great franchisor that he was part of. So getting to see that and then meeting Eric Stites and what he was doing with FBR really resonated with me. That if there was a way to make it easier for people to understand this is the right brand for me or this is not the right brand for me, before making that huge investment of not just their sometimes life savings, but their time, I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be part of more transparency in franchising and more responsibility, which is what we're talking about today.
So 18 years at FBR, that's a great stint. And so that was what attracted you to the business, to getting involved. You obviously knew a little bit about franchising from the family and stuff. But so how is that? What was the business like when you got involved to now? Like what?
So the FBR business, I was employee number one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the business was Eric.
It was just Eric.
It was just Eric.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, Eric he's so wonderful. I mean, I couldn't say enough wonderful things about him, just what he's done in the franchise community, but also what he's done for me. And so starting with him, employee number one in a sales capacity, and it was just him and I, we had a technology person that came on with us pretty early on, was fun, and trying to figure out how you kind of stand out. There's a lot of suppliers in franchising. And when he came out, I think there was one competitor in the space, which is great. It's great to have other people doing what you're doing. But we were put in a role of education, of telling a franchisor or kind of coaching them through, why would you want to have a third party come in and ask your franchisees what they think about you? It was pretty scary. This was 2005. It was scary for them. They'd say, "I don't want to know, because then I'll have to do something." And sometimes I'd hang up a call and I'd be like, "I don't know, like if these people hear what they're saying, like they don't want to know what their franchisees are thinking, because then they'll have to do something." And yeah, it's frightening, but it's changed dramatically.
And it still happens to that conversation. Still happens, as we know.
Definitely still happens.
Yeah, people get scared.
People are scared
of the feedback.
Yeah, people are scared, and I will be very honest and say founders are the scaredest. There's too much emotion in what they've built that they are terrified to get that feedback. And what I would say is, if you're not asking, someone else is. And so it is so easy for people to just put their version of their experience with you online. So being able to get a kind of a picture of what the group sentiment is. We don't ever look to replace one-on-one validation calls between a candidate and franchisees in the system. That is a crucial, I think, important part of any business exploration or purchase. But we wanted to make it easier to look at what does the aggregate sentiment of the system look like. You're always going to have people in your system that aren't happy, and you're going to have your huge cheerleaders. But what you want to look at is like, what does it look like as a group? How can I help those individuals that have a different experience than that group? And so it shouldn't be scary. Feedback is a gift, and if they are giving you constructive feedback, you can do something with it. If you're not asking, you can't change it.
So did the data that you were collecting, the questions you're asking, has that evolved a lot over the time, or is it?
It has not evolved a lot. It's twice we've changed the question sets, and it's really been tweaks. I would say what we set out to do, what Eric's idea was, we want to ask a baseline of questions that any candidate would want to know about a system. We were in a great session today at the IFA where all the award winners talked about, it was a masterclass, and talked about what is great, what makes your franchise system great. And Catherine Monson put out, but I think it came from a session yesterday, is that 85% of franchising is the same across whether you're service-based, whether you're brick and mortar, and 15% of it is really about that brand and that unique part of it. So we're trying to capture that 75, 85%, training and support, leadership, financial opportunity, the things that are core, whether you're delivering a product or service, is the same. The main change I think we've made that I think is important is we added a section around the field support person, the business coach. Not every system has that role, but it's definitely increased since we started the survey 18, 19 years ago, and decided to try and start benchmarking it, because that role of the person that's directly supporting your franchisee in the market is crucial to the success of your brand and for that franchisee in their business. So we did add that section. I think that's the major change that we've made in 19, 20 years.
Cool. And I saw Catherine speak yesterday, and she talked about your business, which was great as well. But what I loved about what she said was around her flywheel. With at the top of the flywheel is franchisee profitability. And so the characteristics of the businesses that are in the Neighbourly group is all at the heart of it is franchisee profitability. If the franchisees are successful and they're financially successful, everything else in the rest of the flywheel seems to fall into place. And so I think as a characteristic that you see from successful brands, that's one of them. But were there other characteristics that you see from the data that the successful, what sort of things do the other successful brands, what comes out of the data for them?
Okay. So first I'm going to tell you, that was Mary Thompson with Neighbourly. So I just want to make sure that we give her proper credit, because she's amazing.
No, sorry. Yes. Yeah, no.
yeah, she's got so many brands. So I just want to...
No, sorry. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So we always say any franchisor that is focused on profitability and franchisee satisfaction, those are the two key components, because your franchisees validate your business and they will make or break every deal that you put in front of them. So that part is crucial. Catherine Monson today kind of reinforced that.
I've gone around the wrong way. Sorry.
Yeah, but reinforced that in that the franchisor's role, which she said is constantly being focused on how you can save your franchisees money, how you can make them more efficient, what those processes are. So I think those are what the franchisors that stay on top or looking to be on top are always focused on, is that change is very hard in franchise systems, but it's also extremely important to stay ahead of other businesses or to help your franchise business partners be successful. So I think the top teams are really focused on the people and the relationships that they're building, and have the mentality or the mindset of their whole team is, you are here to serve our customer, and our customer is that franchisee.
It's really interesting that saving costs and the profitabilities, like franchisors are often focused just on the revenue side, because that's where they derive their royalties traditionally. But the cost side, particularly in the economy in Australia and in the US, the recession sort of looming and cost blowouts all over the place, and the franchisors that really dived into that and said, how can we actually save the franchisees money? So you saw that as well, and that comes out as well?
Yeah, so we really saw that through COVID, is that especially with my lens of being an individual business owner with my husband and franchising, franchisors stepped in to do whatever it took to keep those lights on or to keep that business afloat. So I think that's where the real shift in bottom line profitability versus top line revenue started. It was, if you, especially this year, if you're not going to sell as many franchises, your growth isn't coming from new owners. Your growth needs to come from your existing owners. So what are you doing to serve them and look at their business? One of my favorite questions, so you can add questions to our survey, and people ask, like, what do you recommend we ask? And I always say, I think the best question you can ask your franchisees is, what is the one thing that the corporate team can do to increase your unit profitability? And I think that shows that you're not focused on top line, that you are thinking about what's good for them will be good for your brand, but it's really about driving their business success, and that will lead to your success.
So we talk in our podcast in Australia, we're talking about whether my business partner, John, went on a bit of a rant on social media about franchising's broken in Australia and things are not right. So in your data and results, you do see some of the negative side. Not everyone gets a great score, and not everyone, which is very courageous of franchisors when things are not going so well to get in and actually use it. So what sort of things have you seen on the negative side where
this isn't going to make me any friends.
Yeah, you don't need to name names.
I don't name names. So we do have franchisors we work with that don't have great data. But what I feel like we're so blessed at FBR is that we work with franchisors that care enough to ask.
Yeah.
So they're doing something with the data. So those brands that we work with that have low scores, I'm not as concerned with as the franchisors that don't ask the questions. I'm not saying they have to work with FBR, but when they're not getting feedback from their franchisees, when they're selling based on the brand alone, that frightens me. There's great brands of franchising in the United States, and there's horrible brands. And it is a small community. So if you're in franchising, you hear the stories. You know which ones are not focused on. You know when acquisitions happen and teams come in and they look at stripping costs to increase the money that they're seeing. And that's not how franchising works. That's not a model. And this is PE based and non-PE based. I think there's a big conversation happening now about PE companies. And I think there's some amazing PE companies that come in and they are there to help these brands, support them in knowledge or dollars to grow faster. And I think there's others that are coming in and looking at that. What can we do to get that flip in 5 years and suck the money out, right? So what breaks my heart is these brands that we have worked with for 10, 12 years that are acquired. And I know that they're looking at our data in their diligence and they buy these brands and then they don't commit to continuing to get feedback from their franchise owners. I think it breaks my heart that these franchisees have invested so much in these brands and to know that they're not getting the support, that they're getting mandates to stop traveling out to see franchisees, that they're not getting that annual feedback. It's really disheartening.
Yeah, it's happening here, and it's probably much bigger here because PE is a much bigger place, but it does happen in Australia as well. And it's when they're stripping costs out, things like with FBR, the Zoracle thing, something, it's not an expensive thing to profile your franchisees to get some data, which we use Zoracle in Australia, and understanding the characteristics and competencies of your high performing franchisees, you'd think would be a no-brainer, but it's a line on a P&L, and it's like, not to go. So we've actually seen that as part of my Zoracle role as well, that it gets cut by the PE firm and then it comes back later because they realize that it's right. So and it's interesting, the PE. I think the passion of the founder, how do you bottle that and keep that when you go? So I was involved in Australia in a company called Boost Juice, which is a hugely successful franchise, and I acted for the founders when they sold to Riverside, which was Riverside's first entry into the Australian franchising market. So 2008 maybe, something like that. And I think the Riverside partnership with Janine and Jeff Ellis was amazing because they were involved. They still had the founders involved, even though they were a minority, and Riverside partnered with them successfully to grow the business and continue to grow the business. And during tough times, like, do you remember 2008? It was a pretty tough time around that time. So I think that was a really good story, but there's too many stories where it's the other way. In particular, it's happened in Australia a bit, and I think a lot of Australian franchisors are actually scared of the private equity because it's going to change the relationship with the franchisees.
Well, and I don't know that it has to change the relationship. And again, I will say there's great PE players here in the States that are doing things well. But I would caution all the brands that aren't doing well is that people know, like there is a very small community in franchising. So when you are taking these things away, this support away, you might think that it's not outside of your four walls, but it is. And that's going to impact you growing and selling and validation. So it is a matter of you're there to make change. Totally get it. But if you're not there to service the franchisee, you have bought the wrong business. That is how you grow a franchise system, is your relationships and your support of your franchisees. It's easy. Not easy to do, but it's an easy concept.
Back to franchisee profitability, franchisee satisfaction.
Yes.
You can put that at the top of the tree. This is what we're doing.
Well, and I think it's also important, Bruce, to say that satisfaction does not mean I'm making a lot of money.
No, that's why I put two things.
So I think that's what a lot of franchisors will be like, hey, they're making money. They're happy.
But I think it's both.
It is both. So I think that when you have franchisees willing to give you feedback and be constructive, they're engaged. Yeah. They are looking to help you be the best brand. When no one's giving you any feedback or only telling you great things, I think that's when you kind of scratch your head and say, are we doing the right things? But yeah, I think, and we see people that are not making money but are happy with their system because they'll take responsibility for what they have or haven't put into their business, or they can talk about the way the franchisor has tried to support them or coach them to see better results. And I think that's, it's not like revenue where you want to see a constant uptrend. It's going to always ebb and flow. If you're a franchisor that's growing, that's kind of what you're trying to navigate.
Yeah. I'll come back to that. I want to get to awards. So one personal, so top 100 global franchise influencers in 2021, 2023. They also received another great award, the Crystal Compass Award for IFA's Women Franchise Committee. So you recognised yourself personally, so congratulations to that. But that's amazing.
No, I wasn't on the committee when I received that award.
No. You weren't on the committee. No, sorry, not about the committee. No, it wasn't because you're on the committee that
Correct,
you received an award.
correct.
You received an award. Sorry, mix that up into
Yes,
into one sentence. But so you received an award.
I did.
Separately,
Yes.
you've been involved in the community, which is great. You
Yeah.
give a lot to the IFA and to the community generally, but personally, receiving awards and recognition for yourself, that must be so satisfying to get into being in the franchising sector for such a long time and to be recognized.
Yeah, I think we're, it's wonderful to be recognized, but I think we're all here to just kind of, I want to shine a light on brands that are doing things well, and there's so many great people in franchising. And I love doing that. And so part of that work that's come out of it is just being kind to everybody that's coming into franchising and really being a mentor or being an ambassador that this is a great community for everybody, regardless of gender or sex or who you love. That's really the message that I want to do and support all people to come and be part of this community. And so it is great to see those recognitions because I think that's come from me just being open to anybody that wants to be part of our community and wants to learn how to do things right. So I am a big supporter of the IFA. I think I know it's an expensive organization to be part of, so I'm also very proud to support all the events that are popping up outside of the IFA because I think younger brands and younger executives in franchising are the ones that can benefit the most from the education and the networking.
And then, which is great, yeah. And so we've obviously spent some time. You've got your own event, which
Yes.
was fantastic
Yeah.
last year. And then awards generally for franchisors, recognition, top franchise systems. So, how have you seen being part of those awards? Because they're not always the biggest brands that are winning the awards. So how have you seen some winners of awards at an earlier stage and what that's meant to them?
Yes. So I think, so we do have our awards program, which is based purely on franchisee satisfaction. We do look at the FDD to see if there's any high closure rates, litigation, things like that. But it's really truly based on franchisee feedback. I think that getting accolades is a great thing for younger brands to help them stand out and differentiate from all. There's a lot of noise in franchising, right? It's like 4,000 brands have an active FDD in the United States. I know it's smaller in Australia and New Zealand, but I think
per capita, it's interesting. It's around the same. But
is it?
Yeah, I will say
Okay.
no. It's not. There's not as many brands. There's about 1,000, but there's only
Okay.
25 million people in Australia.
Yeah. So I think that it's a great way to just kind of
Yeah.
differentiate, and especially to have a third party recognize you for those awards is a great way to just kind of get recognition for the brand. What I also think is great is sharing those awards with your franchise community because they're part of this story. And so I think it's a great thing to help bring joy and excitement into how hard it is to run a business and how hard it is to be part of a franchise system. So I'm a huge fan of those awards. I think just kind of understanding what that criteria is and not pay to play, but really, what is the value of that award to the person that, whether it's consumer based or franchise candidate based, how do you use that to tell your story?
And responsible franchising. So we were both in Dallas at the Let's Grow conference, which was fantastic.
It was
a smaller conference that you talked about, and Aaron Harper spoke about responsible franchising there, and then Saturday, Matt spoke about it here at IFA, what responsible franchising is. So what does responsible franchising mean to you, and how's it playing out?
Yeah, I think, what resonates when you ask that question is David Barr at Springboard this year and talking about how there used to be this conversation about get to 100 units. And so I think that's where you saw the focus on hitting this arbitrary goal. And so instead, shifting that to bringing on those first right partners. It has been since 2005 that I've sat in sessions, every session. there's a franchisor that regrets somebody that they knew at the time they shouldn't have awarded that franchise to, and they did, because they need the money. They need to be royalty sufficient. So I think responsible franchising is transparent franchising, is providing your candidate as much information as possible from your team, or giving them questions to ask existing franchise owners to have a clear picture of what it's like to run your business, and to also have a clear picture of what it takes to break even, and that the franchisor needs to be very focused on helping that franchisee hit that break even at or before that time that is in their franchisee's mind.
So you're setting pretty clear expectations.
Very clear goals, yeah.
And then the financial responsibility is, it sounds like it's a joint responsibility.
In that, I think the franchisor is the accountability partner of the franchisee to help them hit those marks towards that break even.
And it's interesting because you think about all the different types of franchising, and lots of the people that are getting into it are passionate about the product.
Yes.
So they might be home care, or they might be fitness, or whatever that is. But they're not necessarily someone who's run a business before. And so the financial aspect of that.
Yes. I think there's been a change in the franchise candidate here in the United States, that it used to be very passion-based, and now I do feel like there's more education in writing a business plan or reviewing a P&L before you get into business. So I think we're seeing more coaching or more understanding around that as they come in.
Before they enter the franchise system,
Yes.
or within the franchise?
No, I think
before.
I think responsible franchisors are doing more of that up front.
Yeah.
Doing that work, requiring that business plan from the franchisee from the candidate before they'll award them. So I think we are seeing more of that.
Great.
And then the other side is all of responsible franchising starts in the development process. So getting your operations team involved in those candidates, understanding what is being sold to them, what is in those operations manuals and those franchise agreements that they are obligated to provide, is crucial. Tying your development and your operations teams together more, that's responsible franchising. The worst thing you can do is set some unrealistic expectation right up front, and then your ops team is spending years trying to repair that disappointment.
It's interesting, we at your FBR summit last year, we were a lot of operational people, and so with Zoracle, often they didn't get the data about the candidates, and so the franchisor was doing some great things in the development stage and understanding the potential franchisees, but not handing it over.
Yeah, and how great would it be to have that, to know how to actually get your message through to someone, to have those characteristics of how they learn. And I mean, it's we see it all the time. Like if we come in through an ops team, the dev team hasn't seen it, or vice versa, and I'm always like, wait, are you guys talking to each other?
And the ops team, so the ops team are the ones, they've got them for 5, 7, 10 years, and they need to understand their characteristics. So that's interesting. And I know your business, you work with people globally. So is there something that, from your data or from your relationships with other franchisors or American franchisors that are going international, that you're seeing any trends that's different here to, say, other jurisdictions that you work in? Yeah,
I don't think that we have. I mean, I don't think that we've taken a look at it so separately like that. Yeah. That's really interesting. So the majority of the work we do are people that are in the U.S. and have locations there. We do look at the data separately, but I can think of lots of systems where the satisfaction's higher internationally than U.S. or vice versa. So it's not like one way or the other. I think the difference is a lot of the franchises that we're surveying internationally have a master franchise kind of over there. So you do want to look at it separately because they're providing totally different support, right? So I have seen major differences in scores between a brand and where their locations are, but I haven't seen anything that says U.S. is higher than international or vice versa. Yeah, everyone's got their own challenges.
And hopefully we'll spend some time in the Australian market and find out a little bit more about the Australian franchisees. So a new project coming. But thank you very much. I know it's a busy couple of days here in Phoenix at the conference, so thank you for taking some time. Really enjoyed the conversation.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.